Welcome to History American. This is a space for conversation and reflection where we explore scientific, social, environmental, political, economic, and statistical topics, as well as current events and stories. In every episode, we analyze and break down key events to help us better understand the reality around us. Find us for free on your favorite platform. You can also support this podcast by becoming a supporter of this documentary series or directly via PayPal or cryptocurrency. We accept contributions in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. You can find all the details in the description of this content. Follow us, share, and join the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to getting into this one.
Yeah, I'm thrilled you're here because, well, I want you to imagine something for a second. Picture the most powerful men on the face of the earth. We're talking former presidents, media titans, nuclear physicists.
Right, the absolute top of the food chain.
Exactly. Now, picture those exact same guys wearing heavy hooded robes. They're standing in the middle of a heavily guarded ancient forest in the dead of night, and they're clutching flaming torches.
It sounds completely absurd, honestly, like a movie.
Right, like a cheap movie script. There's a live symphony orchestra playing while they set fire to a human skeleton effigy at the base of a 40-foot-tall stone owl.
Which is carved straight into a hillside, yeah.
Yeah. If you saw that on screen, you'd roll your eyes. You'd be like, come on, the real world doesn't operate like a comic book secret society.
You'd totally dismiss it. I mean, it's just too over the top.
But what if I told you that forest exists, that ritual happens every summer, and, get this, the blueprints for the atomic bomb were drawn up at that exact same summer camp?
See, when you lay it all out like that, it sounds utterly fabricated.
Mm-hmm.
But everything you just described is verified, documented history.
Which is just wild to me.
It really is. When you start peeling back the layers of this location, that line between, mundane elite networking and absolute world-altering secrecy just vanishes.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we're stepping inside the heavily guarded perimeter of a 2,700-acre stretch of redwood forest in Monte Rio, California.
That's roughly 108 square kilometers, or like 1,100 hectares of just massive, towering trees.
Right, completely impenetrable canopy. And hidden under there is a 150-year-old, ultra-exclusive men's club known as the Bohemian Grove.
A place that's practically defined by its paranoia and secrecy.
Exactly. So our goal today is to figure out this bizarre duality. Like, is this just a secluded playground where billionaires act like frat boys blowing off steam? Or is it the shadowy epicenter of global conspiracies?
To understand how those two incredibly different realities can even exist in the same place, we kind of have to go back to the beginning. Because the Bohemian Grove wasn't founded by billionaires.
Wait, really? It wasn't?
No, not at all. It wasn't founded by defense contractors either. The origins of this place are drenched in this profound, almost tragic irony.
I was hoping we'd start there because the name itself, Bohemian, it always felt so weird to me when you look at who actually goes there today. What did that word even mean back then?
All right, so if we trace it back to 1872 in San Francisco, Bohemian meant something very specific. This was a post-gold rush city. It was industrializing fast, massive railroad fortunes were being built.
Oh, a lot of new, very aggressive wealth.
Exactly. And the conservative establishment was taking total control. So in response, a group of genuine creatives pushed back. We're talking journalists, painters, theater actors.
Like actual starving artist types?
Yeah, writers like Mark Twain and Jack London were deeply embedded in this culture. They actively embraced this anti-establishment, hedonistic lifestyle.
Oh, wow. So they were the actual counterculture of their era.
Precisely. They prided themselves on being poor but culturally wealthy. They'd gather in these dimly lit, smoky basements in San Francisco to drink cheap wine and debate art.
Just completely trashing the greed of the Gilded Age robber barons, I imagine.
Yeah, they saw themselves as intellectual rebels, completely untethered from worldly possessions.
Okay, I'm trying to connect the dots here. You have a group of impoverished journalists hating the rich. How does that turn into a 2,700-acre fortress for the most powerful capitalists on the planet?
Well, it comes down to a really simple problem. Artists like to throw lavish parties, and lavish parties require funding.
Ah, the classic trap.
Right. As their theatrical events got more elaborate, they realized they didn't have the capital. So they made a highly fateful decision to start inviting wealthy local businessmen.
Oh, wow. They willingly opened the door to the exact establishment figures they supposedly despised. How did they even justify that?
They justified it through categorization. They called themselves the men of talent, and they referred to their new wealthy benefactors simply as the the men of money.
Men of money. That is incredibly condescending.
It was. The implication was that artistic talent was the pure currency, and the businessmen were just a distasteful mechanism to fund it.
But history tells us how that dynamic plays out. When did the men of talent realize they'd handed the keys over to the men of money? Because he who pays the piper calls the tune. Right.
It didn't take long at all. By 1887, just 15 years in, the club completely shifted gears. The businessmen realized they were keeping the lights on, so they took control of the membership.
Just push the artists right out of the driver's seat?
Pretty much. They wanted a sanctuary away from the public, so they hiked up the exclusivity. The initiation fee in 1887 went up to $100.
Which doesn't sound like much, but adjusted for inflation, what is that?
Roughly $2,700 today, just to walk into a club founded by starving artists. And that upward trajectory just never stopped.
What's the fee today?
The sources indicate the initiation fee alone is a staggering $25,000 now. And there's a 15-year wait list.
That's insane. Plus annual dues and the costs of the camps, I'm sure. I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and it's like a grassroots punk rock band in the 70s, right?
Okay, I like where this is going.
They're playing rat-infested basements, screaming about corporate greed. Then a decade later, they don't just sell out to a major label. They buy the major label, fire all the other bands, invest in defense contracting.
And build a giant wall around their studio so their old fans can't get in.
Exactly. They kept the edgy Bohemian name, but surgically removed every ounce of actual rebellion.
That's a perfect encapsulation. They commodified their own counterculture. And as the members became these national titans of industry, they needed a physical space to match their power.
So they needed to get out of San Francisco.
Right. In 1893, they started renting pristine redwood forest land in Sonoma County. By 1901, they bought their first 160 acres. And they just kept buying surrounding land until they had this massive fortress.
Let's talk about that fortress, because it's not just a campsite with a few tents and some folding chairs.
Oh, not even close. It's essentially a small, self-contained luxury city. There are over 100 distinct sub-camps on the property.
And members are grouped into these camps based on what exactly?
Often by profession, corporate affiliations, or political leanings. They've built a magnificent 2,000-seat outdoor amphitheater directly into the forest topography.
2,000 seats in the middle of the woods.
Yes. And a massive campfire circle with intricately carved wooden benches, an artificial lake for their plays, and multiple clubhouses with high-end dining.
I am so fascinated by the legal structuring of this. You have a private city for billionaires, politicians, CEOs. How does that function on paper?
This is where we see some brilliant tax maneuvering. Despite being a playground for men whose net worths exceed the GDP of small nations, it operates as a tax-exempt 501c7 organization.
No, wait, explain that. How does a club for the ultra-wealthy avoid paying taxes on a luxury compound? When I hear tax-exempt, I think of soup kitchens or churches.
Right, it's a fascinating loophole. The 501c7 was originally created for things like college fraternities or local amateur bowling clubs.
A bowling club?
Exactly. The logic is, if you pool already taxed income for shared recreation, you shouldn't be taxed twice on those funds. The Bohemian Club just uses that exact framework, but scaled up astronomically.
So they're legally the world's most heavily armed, wealthy bowling league.
Essentially, yes. Their financial records show a steady baseline of around $20 million in total assets, year over year.
$20 million is basically pocket change to these guys, which implies the club's goal isn't to generate profit. The real asset they're buying isn't the lake or the wine cellars.
Precisely. The ultimate luxury their wealth affords them is absolute, impenetrable privacy. When your every word can tank the stock market or start a war, privacy is the rarest commodity on earth.
Which naturally leads us to the extreme culture of paranoia at the Grove. From everything we've gathered, they don't just prefer privacy, they demand it with almost religious fervor.
Religious fervor is the exact right phrase. Just look at the patron saint they officially adopted.
Yes, Saint John Amipamak. When I read about him, I couldn't believe it. It feels like something out of a medieval thriller.
Well, it is literal medieval lore. He was a 14th century Christian priest in Bohemia. The legend says he was the confessor to the queen, and the king suspected her of infidelity.
So the king ordered him to spill the secrets.
Exactly. The king ordered St. John to reveal what the queen whispered in the confessional booth.
But as a priest, breaking the seal of confession is the ultimate sin.
Right, and he steadfastly refused no matter the threats. So the king had him tortured and thrown off a bridge to drown in the Vltava River. He accepted a brutal death rather than reveal a secret.
And this club of modern politicians looks at that story and says, yep, that's our guy.
They revere him. They hired artisans to carve a massive statue of St. John of Nepomuk directly into the trunk of an ancient redwood tree in the grove.
Standing there in his robes.
Yeah, looking down at the members with a single finger pressed firmly to his lips. It's a permanent monument demanding absolute silence.
It's the ultimate sanctified version of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, except it's the Grove. And they strictly enforce this, right?
Fiercely. There's been a strict media blackout since the 1930s. No cameras, no recording devices, no cell phones outside designated cabins, and absolutely no journalists.
But if you build a massive wall and tell the world they can't look inside, people are going to try to look. And the club hasn't just fought reporters, they fought the government.
You're thinking of the 1978 lawsuit.
Yes. To me, this is one of the most revealing moments in the club's history.
It was a defining legal battle. The California Department of Fair Employment and Housing sued the Bohemian Club for outright refusing to hire female employees in any capacity.
Not even as groundskeepers or cooks. And you'd think image-conscious politicians would quietly settle, hire a few women to avoid bad press, and move on.
They didn't. They fought it tooth and nail to the California Supreme Court. But the astonishing part is their legal defense. They argued that female employees would fundamentally ruin the male members' freedom to behave however they wanted in nature.
And by behave however they wanted, they meant something very specific, didn't they?
Yes. They explicitly cited the members' desire to urinate freely on the redwood trees without fear of being observed by women.
Okay, I have to push back on this. Are we honestly supposed to believe that men like Richard Nixon or global banking CEOs authorized Supreme Court legal fees just so they could retain the right to pee in the woods like feral teenagers?
It sounds ridiculous when you frame it like that.
Because it's the most convenient smokescreen ever. If I don't want the public listening to my policy discussions saying we can't let you in because we're being gross frat guys, is the perfect alibi to distract from the power dynamics.
You've hit on the core sociological debate here. Academics note that exclusive groups historically used bizarre, juvenile rituals to build cohesion. By doing things they couldn't do in polite society like public urination or getting blackout drunk, they strip away their public personas.
So they create a bond of mutual vulnerability. I've seen you at your worst, so I can trust you.
Exactly. But you're absolutely right to question if that vulnerability is also a highly effective shield. Plausible deniability is powerful.
Right. If someone accuses them of plotting a war, they can just say, "Are you kidding? We were just drinking beer and peeing on trees."
Exactly. When the California Supreme Court finally forced them to hire women, they complied in the most restrictive way possible. They relegated the female staff to areas completely out of sight, deep in the kitchens and remote laundry facilities.
Because they wanted to maintain the psychological experience of an isolated, men-only wilderness, which of course just fueled the public's desire to know what was happening.
Naturally, if you fight the Supreme Court to keep secrets, people will dedicate their lives to exposing them.
Like Mary Moore. She's such an incredible figure in this story. Not a spy, just an 84-year-old local resident of Monterey.
Yes, in the early 1980s, she started the Bohemian Grove Action Network. She'd watched the armada of private jets landing at the county airport and the black helicopters flying over her town carrying defense contractors and dignitaries.
And she realized if you can't get past the guards, you find the people who walk past the guards every day.
A masterclass in grassroots intelligence. She didn't just protest. She engaged the local working-class staff, the groundskeepers, waiters, valets, regular people serving drinks to the Secretary of Defense.
And she convinced them to smuggle out internal documents, right?
She did. They slipped her event programs, guest lists, seating charts, and the titles of private speeches.
Building a shadow archive. And she did it because she believed extreme secrecy among the elite is a direct threat to a functioning republic.
Her philosophy was very grounded. She wasn't chasing aliens or the supernatural. She was chasing the paper trail of political influence.
But a paper trail can't capture the atmosphere of a place. For that, you need journalists willing to risk arrest.
The journalistic infiltrations are remarkable. In 1989, Philip Weiss bypassed security and spent days inside blending in as a guest. He wrote a huge expose for Spy magazine.
And he witnessed high-level military discussions, which we'll get to. But Dirk Matheson's story in 1991 is even crazier.
Right, Matheson was working for People magazine. He sneaked in, gathered extensive notes, but was eventually discovered and forcefully expelled by security.
Which is usually a badge of honor for an investigative journalist. He had the story.
He had it. and it was slated for the August 1991 issue, ready to print. And then, at the 11th hour, the story was abruptly killed by the publishers.
And the reason it was killed is absolutely chilling.
It is.